Hello there. My name is John Larson, and welcome to my TED Talk. Today I will be discussing how professors build and maintain trusting relationships with their students. First, we will discuss the importance of building trusting relationships between an instructor and their students in higher education. Next, we will discuss the best practices for building relationships and rapport with learners in your class. You will learn how to learn the needs and interests of adult learners. I will explain how to address student viewpoints that differ from your own. And finally, discover and describe how you can apply a Christian worldview by supporting culture and diversity in your classroom. So, with that, let's dive on in. Building relationships within higher education is one of the most important things for a professor to keep in mind when starting a new course, especially when taught online. Building strong relationships with your students helps them to trust the content being taught is trustworthy. According to an article posted in the Journal of Educators Online by Jeffrey Martin in 2019, states that, quote, instructor-created content that establishes credibility and sets course expectations is one of the most important steps in creating an online relationship with students, end quote. The better the teacher-student relationship, the more the student will trust the material being taught and believe the feedback that is given is genuine. There are multiple ways of building relationships and rapport with your students, but one of the most popular ways would be how you teach your students. I believe that creating more of a group discussion instead of teaching at students allows for a conversation to flow, which ultimately helps students understand the material better. Also, a discussion-based classroom setting will help a professor to better understand if their students are grasping the material being taught. When considering best practices on how to learn the needs and interests of your students, these tend to differ depending on if the course is taught online or in person. One of the best practices for an online course would be through an introduction call with your students. According to an article posted in the Chronicle of Higher Education in 2018 by Lawrence Byermiller, he states that, quote, set up a 15-minute welcome call with your students to talk to them about learning style, what about the content may scare or excite them, and how you can partner with them so they can thrive, end quote. Setting the tone early with your students will help to better understand the needs and allow them to trust you that you have their best interests at heart. Having a difference in opinion within your classroom is generally a good thing, since it allows discussion to happen within your classroom. Having a difference of opinion on a specific topic is good to see, since it shows your students are grasping the material and formulating their own opinions on themselves. Engaging in a classroom debate, whether that be online or traditional classroom, will help your students to grow as learners. When trying to create an inclusive and engaging classroom environment, using a Christian worldview is a perfect guide to setting up your curriculum and atmosphere for your class. Creating a safe and welcoming environment where everyone's opinions and ideas are not shot down, but instead discussed, is one of the best practices in fostering an inclusive classroom. This helps students to ultimately feel safe to discuss their opinions on certain topics and know that they are being heard instead of being put down. Now, today, in our TED Talk, we discussed how professors build and maintain trusting relationships with their students. We discussed the importance of building relationships between instructors and students. Next, we discussed the best practices for building relationships and rapport with your learners in your class. Also, how the interests and needs of adult learners are explained. And finally, described how we applied our Christian worldview to set up a supporting culture and diversity in our classroom. I hope you learned something today, and I hope this helps you to understand how professors build and maintain trusting relationships with their students.